Happy birthday in memory of one of the brightest lights Hollywood's ever had, Robin Williams. Today he would be 73. And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to episode 251 of the Confessions of the Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of this steamy Sunday afternoon with me here in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Sadly, today is another somber memory episode. The great humanitarian, stand-up comic, TV star, Oscar-winning movie star Robin Williams would have been 73 today had he lived. And it is jolting and still somewhat devastating to think he's been gone almost 10 years. He died in August of 2014, roughly 1 month after his 63rd birthday. And at the time, before we learned that there were significant medical issues with him that went beyond the fact that maybe he was bipolar or he had other mental health struggles that the general public didn't necessarily know about. But after he passed, there were people in the movie business, most of whom didn't want to go on record, didn't want to impugn him in any way. He left such a favorable impression on so many people, but there were people who were very high in the business who were willing to put their name to a statement and indicated that they saw him when he was at his highest and when he was at his lowest. That he was somebody who, the kind of cliche of the person who makes everyone laugh because they themselves are so sad, more often than not. But in Robin's case, it seems that his health had gone off of a cliff and was going to continue, and he was going to continue to deteriorate at a rapid pace. And maybe he just didn't want those close to him to have to see him more or less become a vegetable in front of them. And this is not in favor of or against the concept of euthanasia, but myself, I didn't consider this a sort of conventional. This to me was not somebody who simply killed himself. This was a person who made a decision because he had already slipped so badly and he just couldn't go any further. Only made it to 63. And the official medical condition he had is called Lewy body dementia, which I guess has elements of Alzheimer's and maybe elements of Parkinson's, but it's all bad. And for such a bright light to be snuffed out at an age where other stars, other people who are actors, actresses, craftspeople in the movie business on TV are still in their prime, still putting out great work, for him to have already felt as if he was being silenced by his own body, it just adds another layer of sadness to it all. There are a lot of cliches about how much joy and how much entertainment he gave to the world, but it's all true. I mean, he sort of almost came out of nowhere to become this huge TV star on the TV show Mork and Mindy opposite Pam Dauber. That show was before my time. I knew of it and I know of it. I've never actually seen an episode. But it is interesting to look back at when people get their start or their so-called big break on a sitcom. There's no way to know. In almost all cases, someone who, for example, watched Tom Hanks on Bosom Buddies in the early 80s, there's no way that anybody said, oh my God, this guy is going to be the next Gary Cooper. No chance. And when Leonardo DiCaprio appeared on Growing Pains toward the latter stages of that show's run, there were people who said, keep your eye on this kid. When Robin Williams came on the scene as Mork from Ork and Mork and Mindy, it wasn't just a TV world. People in Hollywood stood up, sat up, and took note. We've never seen anyone like this before. And many years later, when Jim Carrey started appearing in movies, before he blew up with Ace Ventura, and even when he blew up with Ace Ventura, he had a similar reaction, but actually not as overwhelmingly positive as the general consensus was when people saw Robin Williams. When Jim Carrey first blew up, there were significant percentage of people in Hollywood, movie critics, others, that said, this guy's throwing net on this guy. Like, they didn't know that he was even funny. They said he's just fucking psycho. Robin Williams almost universally was lauded and praised. There was very little pushback of people saying, he's just got a big personality, he's got nothing behind it. He became a massive TV star and was able to very simply switch over and make it into the movie business. Once Tom Hanks got a toehold in the movie business, he never looked back. Same with DiCaprio. Now, in recent years, because of the explosion of so much incredible television, it used to be that the Rock Hudsons of the world went to TV when their movie careers dried up. Now people do both. Kevin Costner, I know the first Horizon film didn't exactly set the world on fire, but you see him, he can bounce back between making movies and television. And some filmmakers like to dip their toe. Jonathan Demme, the late Jonathan Demme, was directing some TV. John Sayles, the great American independent filmmaker, he's bounced back and forth. But Robin Williams, once he started getting a toehold in the movie business, that's where he stayed. And there used to be not really a joke, because it was based a lot on facts. Like, OG Star Trek fans used to say, the odd-numbered movies are not as good as the even-numbered movies with the original series. The general idea is Star Trek 1, 3, and 5, not so good. Star Trek 2, 4, and 6, fantastic. Well, in Robin Williams, it was a little bit different. If you look at his movie career, when he has a beard, he's playing serious. When he's clean-shaven, it's more of a comedic role in most cases. Well, didn't always go that way. I mean, Dead Poets Society, yes, his character has moments, he's kind of a clown, but that ultimately is a serious role for him as the inspirational teacher who changes the lives of his students. But Robin, for someone who was a comic, a stand-up, a pioneering, groundbreaking stand-up comic, much as his contemporary, a little younger, Steve Martin's a little bit older than Robin would be, but the two of them had a lot of parallels in the sense that they were doing things on stage that no one had done before. Lenny Bruce was another pioneer and groundbreaking stand-up comedy who did things that others didn't do. George Carlin. Robin's ability to engage with the audience, no one had ever seen that. And the way he would freeform, where he would go off of his own script, that's not something that stand-up comics did. Most of them don't even like to do that today. You can watch some of the great stand-up comics ever. You can find on YouTube kind of unedited versions of, let's say, HBO comedy shows, going back, whether it's Robert Klein, whether it's Robin, whether it's Robert Schimmel or Carlin. When you look at the unedited versions, you see times where the comedian loses his or her place. They're not robots, they're not machines. But Robin was creating in real time at such a level that when he fucked up, you wouldn't have known it. Because he would start to interact with the audience or go off on a tangent that he hadn't even scripted, and it always felt natural. It felt like a guy making it up as he went along and just being brilliant because this is who he was. He was made to do this. And the reality is that if there was somebody watching a Robin Williams film today, it could be a very young person. If you didn't know who he was, maybe you knew him by face, and said, I feel like I've seen him on TV before. If you didn't know he was a stand-up comic, if all you did was watch, let's say, Good Will Hunting, Insomnia, the Christopher Nolan film with Big Al, Pacino that is, there's no way you would say, oh, well, he was a stand-up comic. You can tell. No, you can't tell. In movies like Awakenings, how could you ever say, well, he wasn't really a dramatic actor. And the same argument was made, not really so much against Jim Carrey, but I've always felt as if because Carrey had that reputation, because he had such a big personality, he was so broad, as was Robin, there was a percentage of the Motion Picture Academy that just couldn't bring themselves to nominate him for Best Actor back-to-back years, The Truman Show and Man on the Moon, where he was spectacular in both films as Truman Burbank, and I feel like he's even more impressive in Man on the Moon because he plays at least two different characters, and they feel like different human beings. I do wish that those guys had been able to work together. Jim used to joke about the fact that whenever he would see Robin, they weren't like friends, they were friendly acquaintances. He said, it's not like I ever went over to his house. He said, but whenever we saw each other, he always made a point, acting like I was his best friend and asking me how I was doing. He said, he always called me Maestro. You know how great that was? Robin Williams called me Maestro. You guys could see Carrey just laughing and almost tearing up at the same time telling that story. If I'm asked, what is my favorite Robin Williams film and performance? I'm going to say The Fisher King. And maybe it's not for the best reason, but The Fisher King, which is a film he made with another just home run hitter, an extraordinary actor in Jeff Bridges, and a wonderful actress in Mercedes Rule, who ended up winning Best Supporting Actress, and another amazing actress in Amanda Plummer, who 3 years later played Honey Bunny in Pulp Fiction opposite Tim Roth. When they boost the coffee shop, that sets the entire plot in motion, such as it is, if you even want to call that a movie having a plot. I don't know about that. But when I say that The Fisher King sums up, and it's the first movie I think of when I think of Robin. I know many of you, especially if you're under 35, you haven't seen it. The Fisher King is now almost 33 years old. But if I'm asked a question, all right, here's how I'll do it. When I think of Jack Nicholson, if somebody asks, which movie role, which performance of Jack Nicholson do you think he's giving us a window into how he probably was pretty close to how he was in real life? I'm going to say something's got to give. Because Jack's reputation, and this isn't something he ran away from, in the world of that movie, his character of Harry Sanborn, a fabulously wealthy music producer. But we're led to believe he's just as loaded as what the real Jack Nicholson would have been worth circa, early 2000s. But his character in that film has been dating 25-year-old women since he was in his 20s. And the movie kind of jokes with it, but we understand. We get it. We see where it is. And Jack is actually really good. And that was a movie where he could have coasted, and you sense the gears grinding and him really trying. But I feel like that's reasonably close to how Jack really was. I believe that The Fisher King, if we just focus on his character of Parry, a brilliant homeless guy. Now, it would sound like a cliche because there were other movies with honors, a film I talked about on the channel. I really like it, even though it's not very good. It's a guilty pleasure movie. Incredible cast. Young Brendan Fraser is terrific, and Patrick Dempsey, just an all-time, Patrick Dempsey is a cheat code. Whatever he's in, it doesn't matter. He's great. But that's a movie where Joe Pesci, who had won an Oscar for Goodfellas, plays a homeless guy who teaches a brilliant Harvard student, actually a bunch of brilliant Harvard students. He teaches them life lessons. That's pat. That's lazy. Robin Williams in The Fisher King is not just any normal homeless person. He is a man who was an educator, possibly a genius, a family man, somebody who was every bit as brilliant, we're led to believe, in his field as the real Robin Williams. And something horrendous, no spoilers, something horrible has happened to him for him to appear to be a normal, loony, homeless person. And Jeff Bridges, who plays a kind of Howard Stern of his day, although not even as nice as Stern, if you could, believe that. Stern is actually much more mellow than he used to be. But he plays a shock jock who did something on the air which ended up, at least temporarily, costing him his radio slot. He was making big money, and now he's just a regular guy looking for regular guy work because, if Howard Stern is out of work now, he's already worth $100 million. This was a guy who was making a great living, but probably was living a little bit too high on the hog. And now he's got to live like a normal person. But in the world of that film, the actions of the Jeff Bridges character directly correlate with why Robin's character is living on the street and why he has a whole different circle of friends than he did when he was a college professor. The character Robin plays is ingenious, funny as hell, has these flights of fancy where he feels like and seems as if he is riding above the clouds and living life above the clouds. And then there are times where he is hit by wave after wave of memories, and he is as low as a human being can go. And knowing what we know about Robin, and so many artists in any branch of arts, whether it's the performing arts, whether it is painting, it doesn't have to be anything, novelist, Ernest Hemingway, it doesn't matter. But we know that there is a percentage of people who struggle with addiction, struggle with loneliness, isolation, mental illness. And we understand that Robin Williams struggled with depression. I don't really know if he was manic depressive, but a lot of people said that he struggled with depression. And the character of Parry in The Fisher King, we don't realize it at first. It isn't until the layers of the story are peeled back that we realize this is a special person whose life was ruined because somebody said something at the wrong time and the wrong ears heard it, and actions were taken that cannot be undone. The genius, the flights of fancy, and the open wound of the emotions, and trying to reconcile his life as it was and may never be again. I see the real Robin Williams, at least 3/4 of that role. Now, he was not going to be homeless. Yeah, I remember reading he had to sell one of his houses. He got smoked in a divorce. There was all of this stuff. Right, but Robin was okay financially. He had stretches where he was an A-list star, and then he had to start playing supporting roles. That happens to everybody. Now, not everybody gets completely, destroyed in a divorce and have to live a different kind of life, perhaps. Maybe you can't afford a $50 million. I mean, it's almost absurd to talk about it, right? But Robin's performance in that film, he was nominated for Oscar. He could have won. He didn't. He would have to wait for another dramatic performance in Good Will Hunting opposite Matt Damon. Now, I really like Good Will Hunting, don't get me wrong. But it's not one of my favorites. If I had to sort of rank Matt Damon movies, I mean, I got Rounders. I think I might have Rounders first. But see, Damon had Good Will Hunting and The Rainmaker. They came out around the same time. I prefer The Rainmaker. It's, to me, a fantastic film, beautifully directed by Francis Coppola. And who knows, I haven't seen Megalopolis. Is it even going to play here, or is it going to be a limited release? Are they going to take it to streaming? I have no idea. Responses to Megalopolis are all over the map. But Rainmaker is great. I really appreciate Matt Damon's performance in Good Will Hunting, but I don't know, the movie, it never really, it just didn't fire. It didn't light up for me. I love Ben Affleck in that film. I know he can be kind of hit and miss when it comes to the acting, but in that movie, the chemistry that he has with his real life BFF, Matt Damon, really good. But his character, unfortunately to me, feels more like a real person than either Robin or Matt in that particular film. That's the character that resonated with me, and I don't really think that was supposed to be the takeaway, but it's neither here nor there. The thing with Robin, though, as an actor, he was never satisfied doing conventional films because he made plenty of conventional big studio comedies, which were very successful, like Mrs. Doubtfire, like Patch Adams, which a lot of Gen Xers love Patch Adams. And if we were to poll, if I could say this out loud, if we were to take a poll of 1,000 Gen X movie fans, let's just say between ages 45 and 55, we'll be nice, okay? I'm right in the middle of that. a lot of people will have Patch Adams among their top 5, maybe even top 3 favorite Robin Williams films. I think it sucks. I think the film is trash. It's not Robin's fault, but it was a huge hit. And Mrs. Doubtfire, not a very good movie. Sorry, it's not. Sally Field's character is absurd. Pierce Brosnan's character is absurd. Harvey Fierstein, it's nothing but ridiculous. Again, to quote Roger Ebert, it's 2 hours of idiot plot syndrome. One thing happens after another in that film where you say, well, this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, this wouldn't happen. The only actor in the movie who gets off unscathed, who seems like he's playing a real character, Robert Prosky. Same year, he played the old man in Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was an actor who brought something to every role. Robert Prosky, you want to Google it there. He was in A Natural with Robert Redford. He plays a judge. A great actor, but he came across like a real person in Mrs. Doubtfire. Flubber was another, not good. But Robin continued to evolve. And this is the thing. Not everybody can have the career of a Clint Eastwood, of a Tom Cruise, of a Harrison Ford. Meaning, even if they're not on the number 1 A-list, that they're not the biggest star in Hollywood, but that they can keep making interesting films and playing different kinds of roles. And Robin, making a decision to try something different, he made 2 movies in 2001, 2002 era. One, his character plays an out-and-out villain, and the other, he plays a character with villainous tendencies that it doesn't go the way that you expect it to. It showed he was willing to continue to grind and not take it easy, and not play kind of lazy supporting roles like in movies such as License to Wed. He always wanted to create. And he had the TV show, was it 2011-ish, with Sarah Michelle Gellar. And she said so many nice things about him. So that show, a lot of people loved it, but it didn't last. I think it only had the 1 season. But that was an example of a guy who had been a TV star, became a huge movie star, went back to TV, but it didn't feel like, oh, he failed in movies, he went back to TV. No, TV was starting to become as hugely critical as movies. When Sylvester Stallone, I guarantee you this, if something like Tulsa King had come around in the 90s or the 2000s, Stallone would have looked at it, he would have thumbed his nose at it, and that's not a criticism, that's a reality. But you get to a point where you keep making the same kinds of movies, or you're making these independent films which suck, like Robin did this movie, The Angriest Man in Brooklyn, which was not good. That was kind of towards the end, where the scripts aren't there and the budget isn't there. You can make great TV, make great TV. And there are people saying that Stallone, I haven't seen the show, in Tulsa King, it's some of his best work, that he really sells it as a mob boss. And you can imagine Stallone, the legendarily restless Sylvester Stallone, reads scripts for Tulsa King. This is really good. It's better than Escape Plan 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. Better than Expendables 3 and 4 and 5 and whatever. There's nothing wrong with going back to TV or going to TV in the first place. There's no stigma. Maybe at one time, it's an admission that you can't get it done anymore. No, it's not. Trying different things in an artistic endeavor is always to be encouraged. It's kind of interesting. The number of movies of Robin's that I really don't like. I'm not a fan of Moscow on the Hudson, and that was a film which got enormous acclaim for him. There was actually some Best Actor buzz for that movie. I really like The World According to Garp. That's a very difficult movie. It plays tricks on the audience because it has long stretches of it. It feels like a comedy, but it's not really a comedy. It's one of those unicorn movies that has a lightness to it, but it's not a comedy. And it's very difficult to get that tone just right. And Robin plays T.S. Garp, main character, and it's a wonderful performance. It's both dramatic and comedic, where his character, he ages, he grows and changes, he has different relationships, he lives a life in full. And he got a lot of acclaim for that performance. He did make a number of real stink bomb movies, but he had enough terrific films within the disappointments, such as Good Morning Vietnam. Hey, there are people to this day that say Robin No offense to Michael Douglas, but Gordon Gekko in Wall Street was probably something that Michael Douglas could do in his sleep. I mean, you could argue that Michael Douglas is more impressive in Fatal Attraction than he is in Wall Street. Wall Street, he's playing just a corrupt, greedy piece of shit. And he's a corrupt, greedy piece of shit from first frame to last. Fatal Attraction, character Dan, he goes all over the place in that movie. Unsympathetic, sympathetic, unsympathetic again, very sympathetic. Robin as Adrian Cronauer in Good Morning Vietnam. He could have won the Oscar. He was nominated. That movie is very, very good. Before I close this episode, though, I want to mention a film that sometimes in Hollywood, you have an actor of stature, and it's not done as much now because with the internet, information such as this, it will land, it will get to people, and whatever surprise the filmmakers are trying to pull off, it doesn't work. It won't work. It can't work. When a major star plays a cameo in a movie, it used to be a big event, and studios would often say, don't say anything in your reviews. Don't put anything in the press clippings about so-and-so is in this movie. Robin Williams took part in a mystery thriller. He shot his scenes concurrently with The Fisher King. The movies came out within a couple of weeks of one another. And if you're like me and you pay attention to this stuff, you will notice that the length of Robin's hair and his facial hair matches numerous scenes from The Fisher King. He might have shot scenes on the same day. But Robin Williams wanted to try something completely different, and he made what amounts to an extended cameo in Kenneth Branagh. This was Kenneth Branagh's first film on these shores, moving over from England, with full Hollywood studio backing. And it's a kind of period mystery thriller set concurrently in the 1940s and in the 1991 Los Angeles, called Dead Again. It is one of the best films of its type ever made. It is a bit of like a Vertigo light, Psycho light. But light in this instance doesn't mean that it's easy viewing or that it doesn't fuck with your head. This is a complete mindfuck, Hitchcockian, what is going on here kind of story. And Robin just shows up about halfway through the film, and his character ends up being critically important to the story. It was teased as a cameo, and there were a couple of reporters that just couldn't resist it. They were so excited to see Robin in the film, they broke the kind of embargo. No one was supposed to know until audiences. There may have been something teasing a big Hollywood star is in a cameo here. But his role in that film is not a cameo. It's a full-on supporting role. And again, he is so good and so believable and sells it. There is not the slightest hint of, oh yeah, this guy's a stand-up comic. His character is fucking sick. He's totally off his rocker. Brilliant. And man, if I were naming my favorite Robin Williams films, even though it's a supporting role, Dead Again is easily in my top 3. I have The Fisher King first. The World According to Garp has to be on that list. Good Morning Vietnam, on that list. I guess I'd put Good Will Hunting in there. The acting is so good. Minnie Driver is so perfect in that role. She could have won supporting actress very easily. She was nominated. The guys ended up winning. Matt and Ben ended up winning for screenplay, and they were both so young, 27, 28. And the joke, Billy Crystal was up there. He says, man, Matt and Ben look so young. They say that the votes are tallied by Price Waterhouse. It's Fisher Price Waterhouse. Man, Billy was the man. What a greatest Oscar host ever. Almost everyone agrees with that. I also need to point out another unfortunately gutting element in Robin Williams' life. His best friend for decades was Christopher Reeve, the original Superman. The best incarnation of any superhero, including Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Christopher Reeve as Superman, number 1. That is a hill that I will go down on. Nobody did it better than Christopher Reeve. And the two guys Both blew up at around the same time because Reeve was a complete unknown when the producers of the original Superman, the Salkind brothers and Warner Brothers, when they made a decision, we're not going to get a big star for the title role of Superman. We're going to pick an unknown and we're going to surround him with big stars. Well, what a brilliant idea that ended up being, getting the Brandos and Hackmans and Margot Kidders and Valerie Perrine and people like that. And we find an unknown who looks just like the guy from the comics. I mean, Christopher Reeve. It looks like Schuster was drawing him in 1938. How the fuck does that happen? But Reeve became a massive, major star almost overnight, as did Robin. And Christopher Reeve was 42. 42! He had already achieved so much. He was only 25 when the original Superman came out. He was grad school age. And at 42, he never walked again. He needed the help of a ventilator for the rest of his life. He was more or less a quadriplegic. And that hurt Robin. It hurt him so badly to see his friend like that. And Robin's gone 10 years, and Christopher has been gone 20? I think he died in 2004. So much achievement, so much brilliance, so many memories, not just for fans, but for everyone. The great performances, the great movies, the personality, the fact that he was so charitable, comic relief with Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg that raised tens of millions of dollars, the comic relief fundraising drives, the HBO specials that he and Billy did. He was a great man, had a lot of flaws. He used to joke that he hadn't been great husbands to either his first or his second wife. But he was a great man. Heart was always in the right place when it came to helping others. There is something to be said for that. I'm not cynical enough when somebody like a Robin Williams donates a few million. I don't say, well, he has the money to give. There's plenty of billionaires in the world don't give shit. So when someone like Robin Williams takes the time to make people laugh for a good cause, even a cynical kid like me could sit up and appreciate that. I think he's a pretty good dude. That's what Billy Crystal would say. Robin Williams, born 73 years ago today, one of the brightest lights that Hollywood has ever had and will ever have. This has been episode 251 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday afternoon with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.